Congresswoman, thank you for the time. We've seen your reaction on Twitter. You're obviously very upset about the decision. My question to you is, Democrats have the majority in the House. They already passed a bill in September that would make abortion legal federally. It sort of died in the Senate. What will Congress do now?
Well, Steve, I think the clear answer to that is this is going to go to the ballot boxes. We need a clear pro-choice majority in the Senate. Obviously, we need to get rid of the filibuster, but in the absence of that, we need a pro-choice majority in the Senate that will enshrine this right for women across the country. And I just have to say, this is a catastrophic decision. I mean, I spent the morning reading this decision. It is a catastrophic decision that strips women of our rights, our freedoms, our liberties, our ability to participate in this society. It affects any number of decisions that we make that are intensely personal, Steve, intensely personal. And if you read the dissenting opinion, it actually does an incredible job of laying out all the reasons why this decision, which is a culmination of decades of Republicans' insidious attempts to end this freedom for women to make this decision about their own bodies in consultation with their doctors, their loved ones, but not being forced, mandated to have a pregnancy, which is what this decision does. Well, and there's 33 million women across this country that will probably be immediately impacted by the trigger laws that you mentioned and the 5 states that are likely to follow suit right away.
You mentioned the Republicans and 2 of your colleagues from Washington State, Kathy McMorris-Rodgers, Dan Newhouse. They both tweeted their support for this. McMorris-Rodgers said this is, quote, one of the most momentous days in American history. So how do you engage with Republicans on this issue at all?
Well, it is momentous in the worst possible way. I am one of the 1 in 4 women across this country that has had an abortion. I and only I, Steve, know what was at stake when I made that decision. I and only I would have been forced to care for a child if I had had to be forced to have the child, to deliver the baby. I and only I have to live with the consequences of my decision. And to say, for anybody to say that they have the right to determine what I need to do is wrong. I do not in any way try to convince somebody who doesn't want to have an abortion that they should. That is the whole point, is that this is a personal decision and we should have the right to make that decision for ourselves. So I think this is going to be about Republicans, independents, and Democrats voting at the ballot box and talking to their elected officials, because I can promise you my Republican colleagues have many women in their districts who are Republican voters who will not tolerate this stripping of a fundamental freedom.
The election will be one thing, but the Supreme Court justices obviously have lifelong terms, and Justice Thomas brought up that the court, he thinks, should be reviewing precedent on contraception, same-sex relationships, same-sex marriage. Whatever the layout in Congress is between Democrats and Republicans, the court's not going to change. What do you expect to change, no matter what happens in November?
Well, if we enshrine these things into law, then I think that's a different calculation. And, you know, that, of course, then gives a different way for a Supreme Court to look at a position, no matter who's on there. But I think you make a very important point. The only thing that has changed in the 50 years that women have been guaranteed this as a constitutional right is that the makeup of the court changed. And imagine the threat to the legitimacy of a court whose entire decision-making rests on who happens to be on the court at that particular moment. Even, you know, I don't know if even worse, equally bad, I would say, is the charge that is in the majority opinion that the only rights that are enshrined in the Constitution are those that were determined by the people who wrote the Constitution or wrote the amendments. Remember that when we're talking about the 14th Amendment, this idea that people didn't have in mind that that abortion was a protected right, that reproductive freedom was a protected right in the 14th Amendment. Well, guess what? It was men who wrote and voted on the 14th Amendment, not women. So the whole point of the Constitution is that it is supposed to, or opinions, Supreme Court opinions, is that they are supposed to be improving the precedent and including those who were excluded. This does the opposite.
Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, thank you for joining us live here on King 5 News at noon.